This video will cover Lesson 1-9 Warm-Up for Secondary 1 Math, Solving Inequalities and Interval Notation. Number 1. 5r plus 12 is less than negative 8. So just as we did on this last lesson, we're going to draw a line down from our inequality sign, and we're going to do the opposite of what's happening to our variable r. So first we're going to subtract 12 from both sides of our inequality, which gives us 5r's is less than negative 20. Next, we're going to divide by 5. Since we have 5r's, or 5 times r, so divide by 5 on both sides of our inequality, which gives us r, and we have negative 4. Now our inequality sign stays the same since we divided by a positive number. So r is less than negative 4. Now we need to write this in interval notation. So we're going to say that r is an element from negative infinity, since r is less than a number, to negative 4, and a parenthesis since we're not including negative 4. Graphing it, negative 4 is in the middle of our number line that we've drawn, and then we have negative 3 to the right, negative 5 to the left. We're going to have an open circle at negative 4, and the arrow goes left to negative infinity. Number 2, negative 2 times 3c minus 1 is greater than or equal to 1. So again, we're going to draw a line down from our inequality sign. But the first operation we're going to have to do is distributive property, so multiplication. So negative 2 times 3c's is negative 6c's. And negative 2 times negative 1 is going to be a positive 2. Our inequality sign doesn't change because we didn't multiply by negative 2 on both sides of our inequality sign. So still greater than or equal to 1. Next, we're going to undo or do the opposite of what's happening to our variable c. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides of our inequality. This is subtraction, so we're not changing our inequality sign. We get negative 1 on the right. On the left, we have negative 6c's, or negative 6 times c, which to do the opposite of that, we're going to divide by negative 6. And so we have c, and on the right, we're going to have 1/6, because the negative divided by a negative is positive. And because we divided by a negative, we're going to have our inequality sign flip. So we have c is less than or equal to 1/6. Writing this in interval notation, we're going to do c is an element from negative infinity, since c is less than the 1/6, but also equal to, so 1/6, and then a bracket. Graphing, we have 1/6, and then to the right we'll have 1, to the left 0. And we're going to have a closed circle, and our arrow is going to go left to negative infinity. Number 3, again we're going to start by drawing our line down from our inequality sign. Here again we have distributive property, so 1/2 times 8x's would give us 4x's. 1/2 times 6 is going to be 3. Now bring down our inequality sign and the 7. Next we're going to do the opposite of adding 3. So we're going to subtract 3 on both sides of our inequality. So we get 4x's. That's going to be less than 4. 7 minus 3 is 4. So now we're going to divide, because we have 4 times x, by 4. And we get 1 is greater than x. Now let's do a quick check, because it's always helpful and it helps us to remember how to check these. Quickly I take, okay, what's something less than 1? 0. So we're going to do 7 is greater than 1/2 times 8 times 0 plus 6. So inside our parentheses we get 6, because 8 times 0 is 0, plus 6 is 6. We're going to multiply that by 1/2, which is 3, and 3 is less than 7, so it worked. Now let's write our answer in interval notation. So we say x is an element from, and here, since x is less than 1, we know it's going down to negative infinity, so that's first. And then it goes up to 1, but it's not including 1, so parenthesis. So x is an element from negative infinity to 1. Graphing it, we have 1 in the middle, 2 to the right, 0 to the left. We're going to have an open circle at 1, arrow going left to negative infinity. Number 4, we have 1/3 y minus 8 is less than or equal to negative 10. So again, drawing our line down. And here, I'm going to undo or do the opposite of the subtraction of 8, since the fraction is being multiplied to y. So we'll add 8 on both sides of our inequality. So we get 1/3 times y is less than or equal to negative 2. Now, here we can do one of two things. We can either multiply by the reciprocal or divide by 1/3. So I'm going to multiply here by the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply both sides by 3 over 1. Well, 3 divided by 1 is 3, so I'm just going to multiply by 3 on the right side. So this all simplifies to 1. 1 times y is y. So multiplied by a positive, so we're not changing our inequality sign. Y is less than or equal to negative 6. Now let's go ahead and write this in interval notation. So we'll say that y is an element from negative infinity to negative 6. That's because y is less than negative 6. But it's also or equal to, so we'll make sure we put a bracket on the negative 6. Now to graph, we got negative 6 in the middle, negative 5 on the right, negative 7 on the left. We'll have a closed circle at negative 6, arrow going left to negative infinity. Number 5. 5b minus 2 divided by 6 is greater than or equal to negative 3. So we draw our line down from our inequality sign. Notice this is a rational inequality. And here we have to do the opposite of dividing by 6, because we're dividing everything by 6. So we're going to multiply by 6 over 1. And we'll multiply by 6 over 1, or 6 on the right side as well. This will simplify to 1. 1 times 5b minus 2 is 5b's minus 2. And still greater than or equal to, since we multiplied by a positive number. Negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. Now, we're going to do the opposite of subtracting 2 and add 2 to both sides, which gives us a negative 16 on the right side of our inequality, and 5b on the left. Inequality sign didn't change since we didn't multiply by a negative. Now, the opposite of 5 times b is dividing by 5. So multiplying by 5. Now we're going to divide by 5. So b, and careful here, we're not switching our inequality, so greater than or equal to, and this is negative 16 fifths. And we won't be able to simplify that fraction, so we'll leave it that way. Interval notation, b is an element from, notice it's greater now, so we're going to say from negative 16 fifths, and it's an or equal to, so we're going to bracket on that negative 16 fifths, and goes to infinity, parenthesis. Now to graph, we have negative 16 fifths, and we got to think about what two numbers could these be that would be next to negative 16 fifths. But 15 divided by 5 is 3, so it's just a little more than negative 3, so we could write negative 3 here, and this would be negative 4. This will be a closed circle, and the arrow goes right to positive infinity. Okay, number 6, negative 3 is less than negative 6 times 2v minus 1, so drawing our line down from our inequality sign, we're we're going to first distribute the negative 6. So negative 6 times 2 v's is negative 12 v's. Negative 6 times negative 1 is positive 6. So we didn't do anything to both sides, so inequality sign stays. Now we're going to subtract 6 to do the opposite of adding 6 to both sides. We get negative 9. Now this is subtraction, so not changing the inequality sign. And then we're going to divide by negative 12, since it's negative 12 times v. And so this simplifies and we get v. But here our inequality sign has to switch because we divided by negative, so it's going to be less than this number. Negative divided by negative is positive, but 9 and 12, let's see, 9 is 3 times 3. 12 is 2 times 2 times 3, or we could say maybe 4 times 3. Simplify your 3's and we get 3 over 4, so 3/4. So 3/4 is greater than v. Putting in interval notation, v is an element from it's less than, so negative infinity, to 3/4, but we're not including it, so parenthesis. On our graph, 3/4, so we're going to have 1 to the right and 0 to the left. We're going to have an open circle, arrow going left to negative infinity. This concludes Lesson 1-9 Warm-Up for Secondary 1 Math, Solving Inequalities and Interval Notation.